My name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. Or even if you haven't, and you just want to know that a little bit more about what good, happy marketing is. As we cover a whole host of marketing topics, I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch. We'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Or find me on LinkedIn. The link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. I want to get right into introducing our guest, who holds a Ph.D, is a professor, digital learning consultant, educator, entrepreneurship consultant, speaker, and blogger. Recently featured in Forbes, Addyson-Zhang has a fascinating story to tell us about how social media can be taught, using social media as the platform to actually teach and learn from. It's so compelling, it's amazing. This episode is a belter, and it actually blew me away a little bit, and I've taken so much from this in terms of tutoring and educating and understanding how to get people to understand the platforms we currently use digitally. So, with all this knowledge, what is the lowest grade you've ever had on a test?
Oh, I ever had? I think it was a C. When I was in college, I was so sad because I was always kind of an A student. I was like, oh my God, I got a C. I was like, I still remember I cried. I couldn't take it. So yeah, that was the one. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I don't know how to answer that.
But now I don't really care that much because my learning and how I define learning has changed so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, we'll get into that in a minute, but it's so strange. That's it's the same here. I've got such a different view on schooling and education and everything, but we'll touch on that in a little bit. So
yeah, just a quick story because I received my education when I was in China. So it is until undergraduate. It is so different from later I came to the US to get my MA and my PhD. So my education in China was like a different animal. It is totally based on memorization, and there was no critical thinking. So like to us, like grade is everything. So I just care about my grade way too much than I should be. So that's also kind of why I was just so sad when I got a C for one of the exams. Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense now. So speaking about history, can you tell us your story? What's been the formula that's brought you to this stage of your career, as professor, digital learning consultant, educator, entrepreneurship consultant, speaker, and a blogger currently at Medium? Whew, that's a lot of titles.
Sorry, yeah. So my story can be traced back to about 3.5 years ago. And because I have been teaching at university since 2009, and I teach PR, public relations, social media classes, and communication classes. So I had always been talking about in all of my PR classes how important it is for students to stay updated, to learn all the different social media channels. So I think it was during spring break in 2015, I was at home grading my students' papers. And I read in a very good student's paper. He wrote in the paper, I had no idea what was Pinterest and how to use Twitter and a bunch of other things. I was in shock. I was in shock for two reasons. One was, oh my God, those students, they were called digital natives, but they had no idea how to use social media channels as a professional. And the second reason I was in shock was kind of a personal reflection. I was like, oh my goodness, I had been talking about those social media channels in all of my classes, but I didn't connect with my students. And I was really trying to discover the why. So my conclusion at the time was because I was not walking the talk as a professor. I was mainly talking about all the social media channels, blah, blah, blah. You need to do this, you need to do that. But I did not embrace digital storytelling, social media myself as an educator. So that was my wake up call. Since that day, March 2015, I decided to change how I approached social media as a professor. And I wanted to use myself as an example to show my students like social media is an effective and powerful communication, business, career building, and a channel. You have to use it strategically. And so my like motive was very simple at the time. I wanted to be a better teacher. I wanted to use myself as an example. But little did I know that simple decision to be a better teacher literally transformed my professional career. And I'm doing so much more than teaching college level classes nowadays.
That's a great story and really interesting, and it leads into a lot of different questions about education and, like you said, walking the walk, and the number of people that I know since I've been tutoring. Not as dramatic as that, but quite similar in that you're talking about these things and you just pay lip service to some of the channels or some of the models or concepts and theories that you're talking about with very little knowledge behind using them, and that's massively important to understand them
Oh my God.
from a practical application.
Exactly. I can't tell you nowadays. I really call myself a practitioner first, and I can't say how much being an entrepreneur or being a practitioner, getting my hands dirty in the field, how much this has transformed my classroom teaching. I am like 100 times better teacher than before because I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Everything I teach my students in the classroom, professionals are doing the same thing on a daily basis. But before, I didn't know that. I could only I read papers, I read articles, I kind of know what was going on, but I didn't have this level of personal connection. So now I speak with confidence. I tell my students, guys, you need to trust me because I know what I'm talking about. Before, I was not able to say that. I was not confident in saying that in front of my students.
Okay, so this next question, you might have to help me with the pronunciation of this. So, okay, I think you know what's coming. But can you explain what social media pedagogy is? That's
You're
wrong.
so funny. Pedagogy.
Pedagogy. Okay, let's try that again. I'm gonna get this question right. Pedagogy. Can you explain what social media pedagogy is?
You're so funny, Peter. Yes, of course. Yeah. So, what this means, pedagogy is basically the method of teaching. So, what this means is I coach people how to use social media and different digital channels in the classroom as a teaching tool to enhance classroom teaching and classroom learning. For example, I incorporate Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, class hashtag, Facebook Live, Facebook group, LinkedIn, and a bunch of others into my classroom to help students learn and teach to enhance their learning outcomes.
Okay, so just expanding on that a little bit. So you use these platforms for teaching on and explaining how they're actually used at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, like for example, not really. Like for some classes, like for example, I teach social media. I also explain at the same time, like how to do Facebook ads, for example. But for other classes, not really. Those classes, like for example, I'm teaching a kind of public speaking we call business presentation class. It is not about social media, but I incorporated different elements of social media. My students are practicing digital storytelling. And for example, they just did their first why video. And I told them, students, they like other people, they don't purchase your what. They purchase or they believe in you because of your why. So I coach my students to do a 1 minute or maybe 3 minute, 1 to 3 minutes why video. And I ask them to post their videos on different social media channels, including Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And when I give them this assignment, they're like, oh my God, she's crazy. Why do I do this? I don't feel comfortable. Like so much resistance. And but now they're like, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to create a public page. I'm going to do more videos. Like, for example, one of my students, he posted his why video and he got so much engagement. And the people in his audience, like, wow, I didn't know you were doing this. I didn't know you were passionate about this. Wow, this is a great why. And his video, last time I checked, he got 500 views. He was like, oh my goodness. I think many of our students, maybe even professionals, they didn't really fully understand the power of digital media platforms. So when my students saw that his like 2 minutes video got 500 plus views and tons of engagement, he was like, Dr. I'm going to create a public Facebook page. I was like, yes, go for it. So just examples like that. Also, like for my PR ethics class, right now I just give them another assignment. We were talking about informational interview. You know, before I became like so digitally involved, I always ask my students after the interview do a paper reflection. But nowadays, I just ask my students to do a reflection on LinkedIn. And also, I ask them to do a video summarizing the key points and embed the YouTube video into the LinkedIn article, and then tweet the article, and then create an Instagram graphic to highlight 1 or 2 points they wrote in the article. So you see how I incorporate like social media channels into this. So one thing is they are learning my class content. Another thing is they're also practicing digital storytelling and get used to the idea of becoming a content creator.
It just sounds amazing. It's definitely practicing what you actually preach. It's just the way you've explained that. It's just absolutely genius. I'm a full advocate of this. It's brilliant. So
yeah, it is definitely like very challenging. I don't want this because it is so different from teaching a traditional class.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot more work for me as an educator.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, I created a Facebook group for all of my classes. Almost every week, I'm reading hundreds of comments from students, and my students are also like sending me private messages, like doing videos, emojis, all of those things. It is very challenging, and teachers, you need to be learning all the time. It is also challenging for the students, believe it or not. I have a student who actually a few who emailed me saying that Dr. This is too much. I'm so lost in your classes. Can we please just do a paper and exam?
That's marvelous.
So you will also encounter student resistance. I think what helps me because I also have professional experience. I know what is working, what is not working. I know what is needed, what are some crucial skills that our students need to have. So I really feel confident. I told my student, no, you have to learn this. I'd rather have you struggle and feeling frustrated while you are in college than after you graduate.
That's it, part of it is the struggle. That's the thing.
Exactly.
You don't you learn to swim. You're not thrown in the water and you can swim straight away. You know, you need to at least dip your toe in.
And like, yeah, so many people just assume, especially teachers, that our students, we call them digital natives, which I think the term has a problem. And but like our students, they have no idea how to use social media for professional purposes.
Yeah.
They know how to follow like celebrity, how to send silly pictures on Snapchat. But like they have no idea. For example, I just gave them another assignment, which is to do a Twitter moments. And I asked them to read like a few chapters in the book and then tweet out like 10 tweets and then compile the tweets into a Twitter moments. And they were like, what is a Twitter moment? I had no idea. It was just so interesting. Now I'm no longer surprised because I knew students, they just don't know, and they really need to be trained. It is wrong for teachers to assume that students know everything about social media, digital media platforms, and they know how to use them professionally. It is absolutely not the case.
So let's just take a step back. Why do you think education in some, if not all countries, is still stuck in this old classroom style teaching?
I think the system is so big, like the entire institution, higher education institution, or maybe even K-12, is huge. Just like an organization. The bigger the organization is, the harder it is to change, to innovate. That's why startup, smaller companies, they are allowed faster to innovate and to have radical changes. In higher education, there are so many pieces, and even in like academic publication, and you normally have to wait for a year before any article comes out, right? If you are lucky. There were times my article waited like maybe 2 years. And so the entire system just has so many pieces. It is so old. It is very hard to innovate, to have disruptors here and there. So based on my personal experience, it is a lot easier to innovate outside the system and to be a disruptor. I tell my students on the first day, I'm a non-traditional educator. I'm a disruptor. I'm disrupting the system. You are going to feel very uncomfortable and being challenged. So I think it is easier to innovate, and we need to have more so-called disruptors like myself so that we can kind of push the system to change from the outside. But inside, it is just like, oh my God, it's like hundreds of years old. That's my personal experience. Even like, for example, if I want to change a title for any of my courses, I have to go through layers of application and approval just to change a course title. Can you imagine that? Like how hard, like sometimes I was just whatever, I don't want to change. And it is just too challenging for people who want to innovate, who want to do things differently,
I think the best thing about your way of teaching as well, or if we look at the old way of teaching, is that everybody is trying to reach a certain level. So they're trying to reach that A, if you like, and that is everybody's best level. Whereas some people learn differently, some people aren't at that level and will never achieve that. But your way, it's almost a case of, okay, you can do a certain element in a completely different way to somebody else, but have exactly the same outcome.
Oh, absolutely. Exactly. So nowadays I teach my classes online. I can see clearly how different students learn. Some of them prefer to do videos, some of them prefer to leave me a voice message, and some of them they were like, I'm now comfortable with video, and they write everything. So it is really interesting to see the differences among our students. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think another fundamental flaw in our system is like higher up, leadership buy-in. Like how, like they don't, I think the system in general doesn't encourage teachers to become practitioners.
Yeah.
And for example, I once did a research project related to social media pedagogy, and I had teachers who told me they were being criticized by their like school or dean or like the tenure review committee for being too active on social media or for writing too many blog articles because they communicated the message that they were not doing research. So can you believe that? This
Wow.
was just 2 years ago. And I believe there are still many stories like that. So I think the system in general, just like teacher, you have to be a teacher. They don't really see the benefits of teachers becoming practitioners.
So how can we get social media into the teaching system so that we're actually learning from it and understanding it from a practical application?
I think really depending on different school. Like I like the stories I share with you. If like in higher education, I'm not familiar with K-12, but in higher education, like you have this ranking, right, in the US from assistant professor to associate professor. So that is like a big step. So for many people, for students, their whole attention is on grade. For teachers, their whole attention is on that tenure. It is so important. And so they do everything that they have to do to get to that tenure status. So if the school in general does not offer any incentives in terms of promotion to become active on social media, to do professional development, to become practitioners, to do internships, like nobody's going to do it because they want to become like tenured. They want to do that to get that promotion. So I really think leadership buy-in is so critical to have innovations, like innovation in higher education is not always a bottom up approach, has to be kind of top down. When leaders like, okay guys, to get tenured you have to have at least 5 industry blocks, and then everybody's going to do it. But nowadays we don't have that. So for teachers, if they want to get that tenure, they have to do what the system tells them to do. There's really no choice, and teaching is already a very underappreciated, underpaid job, and many teachers are bombarded with the service just like so much. So if school is now rewarding them for doing that, nobody is going to do that. Like for me, I didn't start my journey kind of becoming so unconventional after I get tenured, which was quite a few years ago. And so I felt like, okay, finally I can do things outside the norm. I can do things the way I want it. I don't have to play safe. And because I already have that like so-called like security or stability, and so that was a big factor for me. I know many teachers are probably like dealing with that.
So if a student came to you and you mentioned it before that they're finding it difficult or they're lacking the interest in it because it is hard, and that's usually where people start to lose the focus, how do you get them back on board?
For students, I really like, for me as a teacher, I really see myself as a coach. One thing I do not like about education is we always punish mistakes or failures, right? Students get a lower grade. So for me, I try to like really inspire my students, encourage them. I share my mistakes, I share my failures, especially nowadays. I do stories on Facebook within Facebook group. I also have students follow me on Instagram. So they see my day-to-day life and I share my struggles. So like, wow, Dr. I is also struggling with this. I think that really gives my students confidence. And I share my struggles. I tell them, guys, this is not easy. And I also made this mistake, blah, blah, blah. And like make myself more relatable to them. And also I bring in like professionals from the industry. I think that also give students lots of confidence. Like so far, I scheduled 4 or 5 Facebook Live for my Q&A and for my classes already, for students to chat with like leading professionals in the industry. So I think that also help students gain confidence and just come back when they fail.
Speaking of the confidence, I always try and tell students to try and make any assignment or anything they do stand out and be different, but still remaining and covering the right content. How would you structure an assignment or assignment content to really engage with the students?
Yeah, I think I shared quite a few examples earlier. I can share another example with you. For example, this semester, and I think social media, it is really good to humanize the professor. I shared earlier to really break down the difference between the power distance between teacher and students. And another benefit of using social media is to globalize the classroom and to break down the physical barriers. So this semester, my class, I actually collaborated with 2 different professors from 2 different universities in the United States. So what we did is we did a LinkedIn research project, not research, LinkedIn job analysis project. Each of our students from our social media classes was supposed to copy and paste 10 different social media related jobs on LinkedIn. So they copy and paste that 10 different jobs into a huge Google Excel. And so students can see all the job titles, descriptions, requirement. So after that, they are required to do a reflection on the job analysis results. So we give them a few questions to think about. For example, do you feel prepared after you finish this assignment? What are some skills that you already have? And how are you going to prepare yourself outside of the classroom? So questions like that. And they do a LinkedIn a blog post, and in that LinkedIn article, they're also supposed to embed a YouTube video of themselves talking and summarizing the key points. And after that, we also create for this activity, cross-institutional one, we also created a common class hashtag, which is Hire Me Social. And so students use that, and they also participate in Twitter chats, send out like tweets, and we also ask them to create graphics to post on Instagram using the hashtag. And we are also scheduling a few Facebook Live with professionals in the industry who are kind of really experienced in terms of recruiting, hiring young professionals. So they come to our Facebook Live show and interact with students from 3 different classes. That's the beauty of live streaming. You don't have to be at the same time, you do have to be the same time, but not necessarily the same location. You can watch your live streaming on your phone or on your computer or on the go, or even watch the replay if you couldn't join this live. So students are also going to watch a Facebook Live and interact with other students. So that is kind of a cross-institutional activity that we're doing right now. And we really loved it. And students definitely struggle, and which is great. And they're also learning a lot how to collaborate in terms of time differences, how to use Google Doc. And I actually have quite a few students, they have never used a Google Doc before. They're like, how to use Google Doc? They have no idea. And even for the LinkedIn article, it was really interesting. I saw a few of my students for their LinkedIn article, and they even, when you were writing a traditional class paper, you wrote down like the class title, like Dr. I, the dates, for a paper, like a header. So quite a few of my students, they had that header in their LinkedIn article. I was like, no, this is actually a blog. You are not doing this for me. You are doing this for your community, hoping that professional can discover this. So they're really learning lots of like everyday important professional tips. And so that is kind of an example of an assignment. And also besides doing a LinkedIn article, for some of my students' reflections or papers, I ask my students to create Adobe Spark page instead of, so they can practice their digital storytelling and graphic design on Adobe Spark page. It is not easy. My students, they were like, oh my God, I never used this before. There is always resistance. You just have to be prepared. That's why I think professors being in the industry and can give them that confidence when students are resisting this, because professional experience helps teacher know what they are talking about, helps them know that really works in day-to-day life. So that has been my experience. Yeah. And also for my social media class in particular, I also require my students to earn industry certifications. And after the certification, they have to do a Adobe Spark kind of reflection, create a page to reflect on their experience. Right now, they are doing HubSpot social media certification. And in the past, my students have also did Hootsuite certification. In fact, I will be teaching a personal branding class in the spring semester. So I'm thinking about asking my students to do the Hootsuite. So there are many certifications. And if you teach in education, in higher education, frequently you can allow your students to earn the certification for free because they all have some sort of higher education programs. Yeah, so that has been good.
So the higher education program that I tutor for, the Chartered Institute of Marketing, the CIM, that a few years ago they tried with the digital assignment. Part of it was create a podcast, 5-minute podcast.
Oh,
It
that's
was like,
awesome.
yeah, it was great going in the right direction. And now they've reverted back to it's 3 questions, it's all written, and then they hand it in, and just talking to you, it could be so much better. So I hope somebody from the CIM listens to this, because there's so
That's
much.
interesting.
Yeah, there's
Why
so
did they change? Why
I
did they change?
I don't know, probably for the reasons,
Some of
or
the reasons I mentioned,
yeah,
probably.
or the reasons that you haven't, or you are changing, the fact that it's difficult and hard to regulate and hard to mark.
Oh my God, it is so hard to grade my students. Can you imagine like tracking hundreds of tweets on Twitter? It is hard work. Like I almost feel like I need to hire another teacher to just help me like track all the pieces of information from different like now I'm using Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Oh my God, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
if the CIM are listening, I'm going to mute all that, beep all those bits out, so they just hear the positive bits, because I think it's going to be a harder sell now you've said that. But anyway.
Yeah. But like students, they really appreciate that. I can't tell you how many, maybe not
Mm.
all the students, but I received, this is only our 5th week. I already got so many messages from my students. They were like, wow, like first I thought you were so crazy, but now I love it. I wish all of my classes were taught this way. I just hear it from students. I think there's nothing special about me. It is really because we are finally connecting with our students where they are and speaking their language. Like for all of my classes, we use GIFs, we use emojis, we do
Mm.
videos, we're being silly, we're having fun, we laugh. I also do weekly Q&A with my students. And because we are currently in Korea, I also share my life in Korea. Like when I travel to conferences, of course, I also share conferences, like takeaways with my students. It is really amazing. Like I I'm like my students' Wikipedia, and they ask me questions like nowadays, not just about classes, but also about their career. And oftentimes, if I don't have an answer, which is very likely, I was like, let's go figure this out. We can Google and we can compare notes. And oh, I just love it. It is very challenging, but if you really want your students to learn and succeed in life, it is so worth it.
Because they're using those platforms anyway. That's the crazy thing, and that's
Exactly.
what they know. That's what they've grown up
Exactly.
knowing. They haven't grown up, and yes, the old educational system, they have grown up using in notebooks and exams and assignments, but that isn't where the future is. That isn't where we're going. And so sticking on that point, are there any other ways technology can help with higher education or improve it, do you think?
I think I kind of already just mentioned like break down the physical barriers that separate people. Like for me, we're doing collaboration with other schools, and I'm bringing in professionals from different industries, from different countries, from London, from like different states in the U.S. And like even like traditionally, I bring in people to be a guest speaker in my class. So those people basically came to one class, or Skype into one class. But nowadays we do live streaming. So in other words, students from my 3 classes, they can all watch the replay or watch the Facebook Live and join. And the best part is when students are watching a Facebook Live show, they talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
That is amazing because I don't know about other teachers. In my classes, students don't talk to each
Yep.
other. They only talk to people who are sitting next to them. By the end of the semester, they're like, "Wow, I didn't even know you were in my class." I was like, "Yes, that students were just sitting at the corner, right? They don't talk to each other." But in this digital online space, particularly through Facebook Live, I noticed like students are actually commenting and chatting with each other. And I love, love, love that when they practice peer to peer learning, getting to know their classmates. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
fascinating.
Just before I forget, and before we move on to quickfire questions, for listeners, I does a Facebook Live with a professional or an expert in different arenas, and that's sort of how we met and why she's ended up on this Marketing Study Lab podcast. But just follow her on Facebook, and you'll get reminders of when the live is, and they are so worth checking out. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much for the shout out, Peter.
No problem, anytime. So, on to quickfire questions. Are you ready for these?
Yes.
You didn't sound too confident, but let's go for it. Name one must-read business book.
I really love Mark Schaefer. His book Known. So basically, that book teaches you how to become known, how to become like noticed in the digital space. Because social media, there is we are constantly dealing with changes. There's always shiny objects that you want to chase after, and it is very easy to get lost. I can recall a period of time when I probably just started my social media journey. I was very lost. There was so much information. And sometimes I could spend hours in the digital space, but not doing anything. Like my husband, he was asking, "What did you do?" I said, "I have no idea. I just right." And I didn't know how to build my personal brand. My voice was kind of like not cohesive, and I was like all over the places and trying to follow this person, that person. So Mark Schaefer, his book Known, really helps me to see the steps, to understand my mistakes, to put me on the right track, to enhance and build my personal brand. So I really recommend that book.
What was the last thing you Googled?
Because recently a few days ago I just finished writing an article for Entrepreneur. So in that article I discuss compassionate leadership, compassionate entrepreneurship, 3 lessons we can learn from Dalai Lama. So I was Googling Dalai Lama and his teachings, so that was what I was Googled. Yeah.
And there was a nice little plug there, which I'm all for. That's brilliant. What is your most used app at the moment?
Definitely LinkedIn and Instagram. I think they really tie. I was not an active user of LinkedIn for quite a long time. But recently, I think starting a few months ago, I truly discovered the power of LinkedIn, like amazing conversations, amazing engagement. So nowadays, I'm spending a lot more time on LinkedIn, and some of my videos got like a few K views, and like it is amazing the
That's
engagement. Cool. I really love it. Yeah.
What is your favorite theory, concept, or methodology?
Oh, I love Howard Gardner. He has a multiple intelligence theory. I think this really works for teachers because we need to understand our students are different. There's not like teaching is not, it is a personalized approach, but unfortunately not we can't do that all the time, especially when you have classes like 400 students or 500 students in the classroom. There's no way you can practice personalized coaching. But I really love the theory of multiple intelligence, talking about like music, emotion. It is such a great theory.
Excellent. If you could change one thing about the way if you could change one thing about the way we are currently educated, what would it be?
Oh, I think definitely. Recently, I attended a Facebook workshop organized by Dennis Yu, and he's really amazing. And he introduced me to this learn, do, teach model. And like thinking about our education system, I think we are learning, we're also teaching, but the most important piece, doing, is missing. We are not encouraging our students our teachers to do what they teach in the classroom. But how can you teach without practicing what you teach in the classroom? And now everything just makes sense to me. I reflecting on my own journey as a teacher, I was like, oh my God, I used to be such a bad teacher. But nowadays, for example, when I teach media relations, like I have personal stories. I know how to reach out to like an editor, how to cultivate relationships with the journalist. All those things helps enhance my classroom teaching so much more. So I wish our education system can make learning and teaching and also doing a critical part in the in teachers training. Make that a requirement. You have to be a practitioner in order to be a teacher.
Absolutely.
I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know if this will happen, but that's how I see it.
One step at a time. So, final question. If people want to find out more about you or your work, which I'd be amazed if they don't, where should they go?
Oh, you're too kind, Peter. Thank you. And my social media is pretty consistent. Just my name, AIADDYSONZHANG on every single social media channel. So if you just use Addyson-Zhang, you can find me on different channels and even like my email, iaddysonzhang@gmail.com. Please feel free to connect with me. Follow me on LinkedIn. I love to hear from you.
I don't have to tell you how much of a pleasure and just fascinating listening to you talk about how passionate you are about educating and the way you educate and being I'm going to get this right, a social media pedagogue. No, I said it wrong again. Oh, what a way to end. Social media
Pedagogy.
pedagogy, right? You're going to have to follow me around, and every time I need to say that word, you're going to have to
I
remind
think
me.
you are not the first person who told me, and many people told me that word is intimidating. I think I should just stop using that. It is too it's a jargon. Nobody use that word, right? In
Yeah,
day-to-day
absolutely.
life.
I'm never using it again, to be honest. All right, what a way to end. I thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Peter. Truly honored.
I did tell you that was going to be superb. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.